Good morning, California, and good evening, Europe. A very warm welcome from our studio in The Hague. It's a bit cold and rainy and dark outside, but inside the studio it's warm, and we are very happy that you tuned in today for this interesting webinar. My name is Ellen Heap, and I'm a board member of the Dutch Electric Vehicle Drivers Association. Here in Europe, we are very keen to learn of your tactics and strategies on the ZEF policy, because not only because at the European Union we are now busy with our Green Deal and our road to a climate neutral economy. That's what I wanted to say. But I'm especially looking forward to this webinar because in the Netherlands, we have got our elections coming on, our national elections. So I think California is a great example and a great inspiration for our policies in the next coming 4 years. So a great program. Let's have a look at what we are going to show you today. Kate Gordon from OPR and Tyson Eckerly from GoBiz will be guiding you through the background and tactics of this ZEF strategy plans. And a good strategy means involving all important stakeholders. So we have asked different important representatives of the administration why a ZEF market strategy is crucial for California. We have spoken with Patty Monahan, David Kim, Layan Randolph, Cliff Rechtschaffen, and Didi Meyer. So it will be interesting to learn from them. We will also have a live interview with Mr. Roman Partida Lopez, and he will talk from the Green Lining Institute about the ZEF market, the ZEF strategy, and also equity. After these introductions, we will have a panel discussion with the GoBiz team, and we are very interested in your opinions as well. Please feel free to put them in the comment box on the right side of your screen, and we will see that the questions will come through to all the panelists. So please be part of this interesting conversation. And at the end of this webinar, we have got some extra inspiration for you. I definitely look forward to the special message from your Governor Newsom. So I think with no further ado, I would like to present to you Gia Vicin. She's also from the GoBiz team. Welcome, Gia. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Good evening, Ellen. I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
I was just wondering, Gia, we spoke each other almost 2 months ago, and where you presented, the ZEF market strategy. It was a kickoff, and today we are so much further. There's so much work has been done in those last 2 months, wasn't it?
Yes. We've accomplished a lot since the last time that we came together, and we're excited to share with you today where we are and looking forward, and all of the wonderful guests that you've outlined this morning. It was a tremendous lift, and we couldn't have done it without all the participation from stakeholders. So we're really happy to come together today to celebrate and to think about what's next as we continue to work together.
Perfect. We will look so much forward to you. So the floor is yours, Gia.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ellen. Well, good morning, everyone. Good evening if you're in other places in the world. And thank you so much for being here with us today. We're excited to have this hour together, and we have a lot planned, as Ellen just shared. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I am delighted to introduce our first speaker, Kate Gordon. Kate wears many hats in California leadership. She is the director of the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, OPR, and she's also the senior advisor to the governor on climate. So welcome, Kate. How are you today?
I'm good, Gia. Good to see you, and good morning and good evening to folks on the call.
Nice to see you too. So as we get started, we're hoping that you can set the context for the ZEV strategy. So I really have kind of two main questions for you I was hoping you could speak to. The first is, how does the strategy fit in with the administration's climate strategy, and why is a ZEV strategy important?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. And from the beginning, even before President Biden started talking about it, Governor Newsom has taken an all-of-government approach on climate, and that's because we recognize that we have to address climate change on multiple fronts: natural working lands, wildfires, forest resilience, renewable energy adaptation, decarbonizing industry, all regions, all sector challenge, right? This is an all-of-economy challenge. But transportation is probably our biggest challenge here in California and in many parts of the world, actually. It's well known, I think, that about half of California's emissions come from transportation, and that's if we consider both tailpipe emissions and extraction and refining, which we still do here. And transportation itself is very multifaceted, right? We have to look at freight and logistics, at land use patterns, at reducing the sheer amount that Californians drive, which is honestly a big chunk of the challenge here in this state. But we also have to make sure that the miles that we do still drive are zero emission miles. So, solving for zero emission transportation is a team sport here in California. It takes contributions from multiple parties. It's a complete transformation of our entire transportation system. And frankly, a huge amount of our electricity system, because that electrification also, of course, has a big impact on electricity. So reaching for the governor's ZEV targets is a huge challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. And I just wanted to kind of take a minute to look at the numbers here in California. ZEVs were California's #1 export in 2020, and approximately half of all ZEVs are sold in California. With 70,000 shared at chargers and 45 hydrogen stations, we are the national leader on infrastructure. We're the test bed for heavy-duty ZEV fleets. Our transit agencies are global leaders on incorporating zero-emission technology into transit. And recent estimates show we have about 70,000 people in California working directly in these companies and industries on zero-emission vehicles. And that's across about 34 ZEV and ZEV-related manufacturers. So really a significant part of our overall kind of advanced energy and overall economy. I'll just take a second, Gina, to talk about workforce. It's a particularly important part of our roadmap. We're actively developing, the governor has directed my office at OPR, along with our Labor and Workforce Development Agency, to develop a just transition roadmap, really to ensure that the transition to a carbon neutral economy provides real benefits for workers and communities, including those who have traditionally been left out of economic transitions in the past. And that's something I think is really central to this strategy. It's not just a technology revolution. It's really a different way of doing economic planning and a different way of thinking about transportation. That is really embodied in our ZEV strategy, which includes the core principles of incorporating equity in every decision and also embracing all ZEV pathways. And that's important because it includes ramping up the used zero emission vehicle market and investing in rail and transit and other parts of the zero emission ecosystem. I think sometimes we go immediately in our minds to the new shiny zero emission passenger car. This is a much larger ecosystem than that. These challenges and opportunities are global. They're not unique to California. So we're so excited to collaborate within the state, with other states, with the federal government, the international community, and of course with companies and NGOs on all of these solutions, because frankly, we just have to be, again, it's a team sport. We have to have engagement on solutions, on investments. Our best practices need to be tried and tested. we need to learn and improve as we essentially transform the entire transportation system. The strategy we're talking about today is a big step on the path to that. We're all committed to learning continually throughout its implementation. Super excited about it. Particularly, let me just say, from the governor's perspective, excited about the fact that it's brought together so many of the agencies within our government across transportation, labor, health, agriculture. Sort of, it's an all-in strategy. And as director of the Office of Planning Research and senior advisor to the governor on climate, I'm really excited and looking forward to the results. And I'm ready to go. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Gia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kate. It's great to hear. I think one of the themes that I imagine, our participants will hear today is around this kind of recognition that we are all in this together. And as you said, it's a team sport, and that it will require other countries and other sectors. And I think that that's something that we've really tried to embody here, I think, in this administration, and also is certainly in the ZEV strategy. So thanks so much for your remarks. All right. Well, our next speaker is Tyson Eckerly, who many of you know. For those who don't know him, he's the Deputy Director of Zero Emission Vehicle Market Development at GoBiz. And we'll spend some time with Tyson discussing the strategy highlights and hearing his thoughts as we really turn our focus to implementation, and beginning implementation and continuing implementation for those things that we've been working on already. So hello, Tyson.
Hi, Gia.
Hi. So I just want to kick us off with how does it feel to have the ZEV strategy document completed and released?
Well, as we discussed a little earlier, it turns out it's a lot of work to get all that together. And I think, but what I'm really excited about, and where the proof is in implementation. And I think that's where we're heading next. And so it's a good marker in time, but implementation is where the action is. Oh, gee, his internet froze, I think, maybe. the joys of, well, here, so one of the things we wanted to talk about while Gia's internet is coming back is that
Hi. Yeah, Tyson, I think it's great because we've got your sheets ready, and we let Gia try to get in, and maybe we can start with your presentation.
That sounds great. And so what I want to do is kind of talk a little bit about, we can pull up our slides here. Oh, there's Gia too.
My apologies. I pressed a button and turned my internet off. So technical error on human error. Apologies.
No problem. And this is how we're going to iterate and learn through the strategy.
Yeah. So Tyson, thanks for those remarks. I imagine they were great. So I'll have to get it when I review the video. Maybe we'll just jump into the key aspects of the final market strategy.
Yeah, so I think just, as we look about the ZEV strategy, it's really about who does what and some of the how, and it's built around collaboration and teamwork, but with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And so what I want to do is kind of jump into it and talk about, how we should really think about the ZEV strategy. And so I'm a big fan of these sketches, but the idea is the ZEV market development strategy document itself is really just a foundation, and the real work is the kind of building the house. We use the house analogy. The keys, is that we got to pick out all the different components of the house, but it's implementation, it's iterative, and we learn as we're building. And so the other point we want to drive home is it really does take all of us, right? So we have that foundation, kind of who does what and how, but then really kind of putting it to work is where the action is. And so if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit just about, what that core foundation is made up of. And this is the unifying image of the document. It's, our 5 principles and 4 pillars. And so the core principles, Kate mentioned it, it's, I'll just go through them, is equity in every decision. It's the idea that everything that we do as a state, we need to make sure we have equity at the forefront in mind, and make sure that we're reaching into the priority populations and communities that have been most impacted through time. It's about embracing all ZEV pathways. This means, battery, fuel cell, rail, hydrogen, electricity, and the marriage between all those to pull them all together so we can end the need for combustion. This, idea of collective problem solving, no single group has all the answers. And so we all need to work together to develop and solve problems. the fourth one is, the public complements private, right? So that public policies can help de-risk the market. It can help accelerate action, and it's really important. But the private sector is really where the action is in terms of driving scale and technological innovation. And so it's that marriage between the two that can really accelerate the market. And then finally, we want to make sure we're designing for resilience and adaptation. I think we think of resilience and adaptation as, response to, climate change and all this stuff happening, but it's also a real opportunity because ZEVs do provide opportunities to increase resilience and have us more adaptable going forward. And so that core foundation feeds into our four pillars of the market, vehicles, infrastructure, end users, and workforce. And the idea being all of these need to be in balance to be able to accelerate the market going forward. And all the objectives in the strategy tie back to at least one of these four pillars, often multiple. And then this all drives towards the outcomes we're going for. It's improved air quality, it's reduced greenhouse gas emissions, it's increased access, it's economic development and jobs. And we'll, for all those those outcomes and pillars, we're developing a metrics portal. Some of it already exists where you can really take and assess the health of the market. But it all feeds up into our ultimate goal of large scale, equitable market development. And so if we go to the next slide, who really matters, right? So we have 29 agencies that have a hand in the ZEV market. And so we're not going to go through all of these, but I would encourage you to open up the strategy and look down at the appendices and kind of see what some of those lesser known agencies in the ZEV space are up to. And there's some exciting stuff there, and we'll be iterating and adding more as we go. If you go to the next slide, we've organized stakeholders into 12 groups, and it's not a perfect organization because some groups fit in multiple boxes, but what we did is, if you look at a local regional government, like what do we need from local and regional government, with their input in terms of objectives to help deliver the market, or, for investors and financing institutions. And so that's all outlined in the strategy as well. If we go to the next slide, I wanted just to highlight a bit on the implementation. So one of the things we point out in the strategy is the idea of creating agency action plans. So each agency has a set of objectives, between 1 and 8 objectives, that tie back to those core 4 pillars. Their action plans will have concise, measurable key results and actions that tie back to each objective, and with the explicit direction to make sure that we have equity embedded in every decision. And so the process here, and it's pretty aggressive, but the draft plans will come to GoBiz here at the end of this month. We're aiming to post them mid-month in March. And really, it's about implementation going forward. At the end of the year, we'll report back on the actions. Like what did we accomplish? What did we miss on? And we're going to take that information and feed it in and post it to the website and feed it into the next year's plan. So it's an iterative cycle. There'll be plenty of room for feedback from other stakeholders as well. If you go to the next slide, just want to talk a bit about what bringing everybody else into it. So we have pillar priority documents. So it's the idea is like what collective actions can we do to help push the market? And we have 6 concise documents in mind. So one for each of the pillars, and then 2 cross-cutting ones. So the one's about engagement, equity engagement. How do we make sure that we're pulling insights from the communities we're trying to impact in a positive way? And then the cross-cutting thing, so like finance ties all these things together. Regulatory alignment ties these things together. Funding alignment ties it together. And that process for these documents will also mirror the agency action plans. We're going to post draft plans by mid-March, often with a lot of the feedback that we gain from developing the strategy itself. That we'll get some stakeholder feedback. We'll update the documents on a very aggressive schedule. And the key point I want to drive home is there's ongoing stakeholder feedback built into this whole process. So either direct one-on-one meetings, emails with stakeholder forums. We're going to need help from lots of groups to pull this all together. At the end of the year, we'll report on progress and start the cycle over and over again. And so the last slide here, and then I'll be done. Is this thing, staying engaged. We have our website. It's very hard to read, but we'll flash that up at the end. But on the website, there's a link to emailing us. You can also sign up for our regular implementation updates. It's our roll up your sleeves list. And with that, I think I can hand it back to Gia. But that's kind of a general overview of what we have.
Thanks, Tyson. That's great. We'll have a chance before too long to get into any questions that people have on this when we get into the Q&A section a little bit later. So before we move to our next, I actually have one more question for Tyson. If we can bring him back up. I want to do a little bit of time travel, and so imagine that it's 2035, and ZEVs are the only cars on the car lots. And looking back, what do you think will have been the key aspects of our success?
Well, thanks, G. I think, actually we write this in the plan a bit, like when we get there and we're successful will have had many parents. So I think you look back and there'll be contributions from everybody who's probably listening here and more. And so I think, really what I'm looking forward to in that future is that everybody kind of here who's a part of it will have, that internal knowledge that they played a pivotal role in helping develop this market and make that ZEV only future is possible.
All right. Hear, hear. Okay. Thank you, Tyson, so much. All right, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce our next segment here, where we'll hear ZEV perspectives and insights from leadership at some of our other key state agencies.
Governor Newsom has given us very clear direction with crystal clear goals about what we need to do to electrify transportation. We have to get all new passenger vehicles electrified by 2035. We need all new commercial trucks by 2045 where feasible. So we really got to scale up, and we got to do it fast. The ZEV strategy is really our roadmap for meeting these goals and rapidly scaling up zero emission vehicles and their needed infrastructure.
Well, it's not every day that having a master plan or a strategic plan is going to result in a ticker tape parade. But I got to say that this one is truly exciting because we now have a detailed playbook for how we're going to dramatically expand adoption of zero emission vehicles and what it's going to take to get us there from the standpoint of infrastructure, incentives, workforce, and so many other aspects. And I do want to add that meeting our climate goals through zero emission light duty vehicles is just one component. We're also investing in zero emission public transit and rail, and of course, doing everything possible to expand fueling infrastructure for zero emission vehicles, not just on the passenger side, but medium and heavy duty vehicles, especially transit buses, and of course, reducing VMT and encouraging greater mode shift.
I think there's opportunity across the board in manufacturing vehicles and parts, in building and implementing charging stations, right? In providing green growth for industries around the zero emissions vehicles industry. So I think there are opportunities across the board. And I think by being first with the strategy and by being first with a goal, a big audacious goal, that we can drive growth across all of those sectors, across all of those services, across all of those parts of the state. So it's really exciting.
Well, to be successful, it's very important that we have a single strategy that pulls together all the various state efforts into one coherent whole. We're a big state. We've got a lot to do. We have many agencies involved in the transition to transportation electrification. This strategy outlines an ambitious vision for the future and a path to get there. And you can't get there without a plan. It's that simple. And utilities can play a very important role in developing programs for the medium and heavy duty sector, for multifamily buildings and hard to reach and underserved communities. And GoBiz's work in this effort through this market development strategy will be key. It will coordinate our efforts with the infrastructure planning and investment activities of the California Energy Commission, the emission reduction mandates of the California Air Resources Board, the mobility efforts of the California Transportation Agency, and many other relevant agencies.
One of my favorite phrases right now is a whole of government approach to tackling incredibly difficult issues like climate change. And with the ZEV market strategy, we're really looking at whole of government, whole of industry, whole of individuals, and really trying to pull together that cooperation and gain alignment in what are the best levers to pull so that the market can go in the right direction to really see full zero emission vehicle deployment. And this is an urgent issue. We don't have any time to waste. And so we all need to be working together.
I want to tell them that California is excited to have them as a partner with battery electric vehicle commercialization. We need additional partners to step up on fuel cells, which we're starting to see now, but I think we need a lot more support from, especially in the EU, for fuel cell commercialization, because we want to drive down prices for fuel cells the same way we have driven down prices for batteries. President Biden has laid out a goal of having 500,000 electric vehicle chargers installed across the country. But I want to say that here in California, we're going to need a lot more than that. So we've done an analysis of the charging needs to meet Governor Newsom's executive order. And it's still in draft form, but what we're finding is about the need for about 1.5 million chargers for light duty vehicles by 2030. So we're going to need to scale up rapidly charging infrastructure to make sure that everybody can get access to the clean air benefits from transportation electrification.
Well, I think it's important for people to know that California is all in when it comes to zero emission vehicles. We're here to lead the way, and we greatly welcome the involvement of all who have been watching, observing, and ready to join us. And we've taken bold steps under Governor Newsom's leadership to tackle the climate crisis, even while the last federal administration tried to undermine our progress.
Zero emission vehicles are not a zero sum game, right? We can build a thriving industry in California with the help of our partners around the country and around the world, with the help of investment from, again, from around the globe. And the lessons that we learn, the progress that we make, the vehicles that we build, the infrastructure that we build is going to help the entire world transition. So again, it's not a zero sum game. Our success will beget more success, which will beget more success, which is really what we're interested in.
California is doing a great deal to promote the zero emission vehicle market, but we can't do it alone. We need partners, we need colleagues, and not just the Netherlands, Norway, and the United Kingdom. We need partners in the United States as well. And I would also say to the rest of the world and the federal government, watch us. California can serve as an example of how to electrify transportation rapidly, efficiently, and at reasonable cost. We hope to develop the market for electric vehicles, both light duty and medium and heavy duty vehicle, in the same way that we really helped develop and transform the market for solar panels a decade ago through our policies.
I would say, let's be partners in this. Let's figure out how we can sustain investment and grow this market as quickly as possible. It's going to take all of us to get to scale. California, the US, international partners, and we need to increase that investment and share the lessons learned in what strategies are effective, and really improve our implementation of this market strategy, and use that learning to develop markets all across the country and the world. And we really want to do it in a cooperative and closely coordinated way.
I'm happy with the strategy as it reads now, but I'm going to be much happier when we have demonstrated to the world that California can electrify transportation while setting a course for a 100% clean electricity system that's affordable, safe, and reliable. We need to demonstrate that this is a transition that works for everybody, whether you live in an apartment building, whether you're low income, whatever your situation. We want to make sure that you have access to either the vehicles the clean air benefits, and just to a cleaner transportation system generally. So again, this has to be transportation electrification for all.
Well, I'm already happy that the strategy's out. It's a huge milestone and a lot of heavy lifting and careful thought went into it. I think it's really creative and collaborative, but now, like any plan, we have to go out and execute it. And there's no silver bullet, and it's going to take an all-out, sustained effort with state agencies as well as industry. And we really have to move with a sense of urgency because there's no time to waste when it comes to reducing our consumption of fossil fuels, as well as reducing our dependence on driving. We cannot let our foot off the pedal. I personally drive a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. It is a fabulous car, and I've seen it from the ground up. And from a personal standpoint, I know how important it is to greatly expand our overall network of EV charging infrastructure, both for battery electric vehicles as well as hydrogen fuel cell. Coverage within the state of California is good. There is room for improvement, and that's our goal, to be able to really dramatically expand our network of EV charging stations throughout the state so that it is convenient for users of EV cars. So lots to look forward to, a lot to do in the years ahead.
Yeah, at the end of the day, right, it's about scale and it's about equity. So for scale, we're looking for that point where we no longer need active public investment, where the market takes over and there's electric vehicles are accessible and they're affordable, and there's infrastructure to keep them running, and they move not only from the personal automobile and truck market, but across transportation. And so it's really an exciting opportunity to get the ball rolling. But we want to make sure that all communities can participate in this transition, and that, again, that technology and that new access to different kinds of transportation are accessible to all of our communities across our state and hopefully eventually across the country and around the world. So we really want to be part of that entire transition equitably. We want to make it sustainable. We want to make it a leader. So that's, I think we'll be happy when that market's standing up and it's successful in its own right and everybody is a part of it and it's thriving and makes the point that we could do it, we did do it.
3 things will make me happy. I'm not that hard to please. I'm really not. Number 1, I'll be happy when I know we're on a glide path to meeting our 2035 goal in California of all new passenger vehicles being zero emitting. We can do it. In 2012, we set a goal in California under Jerry Brown when he was governor, under Governor Brown's leadership, of 1.5 million zero emission vehicles by 2025. It seemed like a bit of a moonshot then, but at the rate we're going, we're going to easily meet that goal by 2025. That's number 1. Second, I'll be happy when ZEVs and charging infrastructure are as accessible to low and moderate income consumers and underserved communities as they are for everyone else. Unfortunately, we're still not there. We have quite a ways to get there. And third, in my regulator hat, I'll be happy when there's so many electric vehicles on the road that they drive down electricity rates for everyone, not just EV owners.
I'm going to be happy when buyers don't think of zero emission vehicles as some specific niche, but just a basic part of our car and truck inventory. And we're starting to see that happen. We are starting to see manufacturers have a variety of vehicles in terms of size and price point and features. And as that market grows, it gives many, many buyers across the economic spectrum the opportunity to get into a zero emission vehicle and really achieve the improvements in air quality and climate benefits that we all want to see for all of our communities. And so at that point, then I will be happy.
All right. Well, it was great to hear from some of our California leaders and their reflections about this process and looking forward. I also want to just take a quick minute to thank our colleague, Peter Van Deventer, who was the director, producer, editor for that video. So thank you for the time that that our leadership took, and to Peter as well. All right, well, let's move into our next segment here. We're going to spend some time on equity now. The Zero Emission Vehicle Executive Order directs a focus on equity, and we've been working to integrate it into every aspect of the ZEV strategy. And there are many, many individuals and groups working on equity, and I just want to say that we really appreciate all of the input that we've received so far. Our next guest is going to talk a little bit more about this. It's Roman Partida Lopez, and Roman serves as a legal counsel on the environmental equity team at the Greenlining Institute, where he works to ensure that lower income communities of color have a seat at the table to help drive climate investments towards improving air quality and economic opportunities within their communities. And Greenlining has been a great partner to the state, and particularly during the development of the ZEV strategy. So welcome, Roman. We're excited that you're joining us today.
Good morning, Gia. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask one question I was hoping you could speak to, which is that as Tyson mentioned, equity in every decision is our first core principle in the strategy. And so this was intentional. What does successful implementation of this principle look like to you?
Yeah, thank you, Gia, for that question. First off, we want to thank GoBiz, the governor's office, and others who've worked on the development of the strategy. We want to acknowledge the hard work that's gone into putting this together, and then intentionality behind having equity show up so predominantly in the document. And I also want to acknowledge the hard work of agencies, staff, and of course, community stakeholders who've been engaging on this matter for years, trying to make sure that we develop strategies like this one, right? That embed equity, that center equity, and that we're developing policies and strategies that will benefit our most vulnerable communities. And we're encouraged to see that the strategy's strong commitment to equity. It's been clearly defined on how equity will show up, and it must show up in every decision that's made moving forward, right? We've seen progress when it comes to addressing equity, where before it was always just a component of the strategy. But here, we hope that this type of commitment is what is replicable, right? And it's what drives the strategy. When we talk about equity, we must do so with intentionality, the intentionality of prioritizing our most vulnerable communities first, because our communities continue to bear the brunt of structural racism and climate change. And I want to uplift some of the comments that were made by various commissioners and the chairs of why we need to drive with equity and why we need to ensure that we approach this work holistically. This strategy, to be successful, cannot just be about moving cars, but really about people. And therefore, we must approach this through a holistic approach. It must be inclusive of all forms of transportation, active, transit, medium to heavy duty, and of course, passenger vehicles. But we need to make sure that the primary focus of this strategy is not just about market transformation, but how we're going to be improving the quality of life of the people of California and beyond. As it was mentioned, this is a team effort that will require a comprehensive approach. And we must all approach this, work through that vision to be successful. To accomplish this, our efforts must make equity real by operationalizing equity within the work. As we move towards implementation, agencies and everyone else who's working on this must take direction from the process that this strategy went through and ensure that equity is showing up everywhere, that it shows up in the goals, vision, and values, that it shows up in the process, that it shows up in the implementation, and then that it shows up in the evaluation of analysis. We encourage each agency to develop their own set of guiding standards and principles that will help ensure that they're prioritizing our most vulnerable communities. These standards should really prioritize community-driven processes, addressing past harms and burdens, build community capacity, and establish paths for wealth building. If we follow this approach, we'll set up each strategy and action in a path for success, because it will be really intentional of how we're addressing equity in every decision. I should note that this effort should not supplant a process that is inclusive of community. We can't use the word equity without working to dismantle the very systems that have created burdens on our most impacted communities. Some of these systems continue to be part of how some of our agencies continue to operate, and therefore we must really approach this work with that intentionality, and We must listen and uplift our most vulnerable communities to address the problems that we continue to see in their communities. And because we know that our communities know the problems, they also have the solutions. So we can't talk about equity without having the community voice be part of the discussion and the implementation. If California is all in and it's ready to lead the way, equity must not just be a buzzword, right? Because if it's just a buzzword, where we'll end up, well, the end product will just be the status quo, and we can't have the status quo anymore. By saying that equity will be part of every decision, it must be reflected in everything that we do, from the strategies, the policies, and the investments that we're making. As we roll up our sleeves and get to work, we must always remember that our communities have been on the front lines of this struggle for far too long. So we cannot pick and choose when we apply equity. We must at all times approach this work with a critical lens and through a comprehensive approach that not only prioritizes environmental impacts, but that prioritizes a just transition and a recovery that connects our communities to improved environmental and socioeconomic conditions. Only then, when we work collectively and we prioritize equity, can we ensure that we're working to create a just and healthy future for all our Californians. And only then is when we're going to be successful at implementing this as strategy. So thank you, Gia.
Great. Thank you, Roman. I wholeheartedly agree. I am so looking forward to continuing our work together and bringing in more groups as we think through the equity engagement strategy. And you're absolutely right. It's across the board. Those communities that are closest to the problems are those that are most impacted and have the solution. So thinking about just transition and workforce, and also just the needs of individual communities is so important. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on that and your reflections. And we look forward to more partnership. Okay, well, we've heard quite a bit now from our speakers, and we're going to spend a little bit of time opening the floor to our participants here. So as Ellen mentioned at the beginning, you can write your questions in the chat box, and I see some have already been coming through, and we'll run through those. And then I'd like to invite my GoBiz colleagues up to the screen, and we will get started. All right. Hi, team. Okay, we have several questions coming in already, so we'll kick it right off. Our first question is, and I think maybe Tyson, you can jump in on this one. Does the ZEV plan run the risk of getting bogged down by almost 30 agencies at the table? So it's around how are we managing this process and keeping everyone moving forward together and focused on the end goal?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so the answer is no, we don't get bogged down. The objectives that we set out there is really to give clear direction at, everybody from the, top of the agency to the frontline staff who are doing the work. Well, everybody's doing the work, so don't take that the wrong way, but to make sure they have that clear direction of what they should be doing. What we're trying to do is empower each individual within our state administration to make decisions that are good for the market, because they have a lot of the information that is, they're doing that frontline work where they've engaged with the community. So I think what we're trying to do with the strategy is empower that individual decision making, and it all feeds back up through the agency action plans and stuff. And of course, we're going to learn and as we go and make amendments. But I think with 29 agencies, we're already seeing benefits today just from getting the strategy out there.
Great. All right, thanks, Tyson. All right. So are there plans and funding for consumer-facing campaigns? And let's see, I think, Tyson, maybe you can take that one again, too. Yeah.
So I think, this is something, when you look at the end user pillar, for example, we really have to examine who's contributing what. So there's already great campaigns going, like with the Lowe's and with Electrify America as two leading examples. And then, for the state contribution, we're encouraging those as much as possible. But I think it's an active discussion, and what needs to be done and who needs to play a role to raise awareness for the end users, and that in this case would be the drivers. But it's also access. It's educating fleets. It's creating decision-making tools there. So there's a lot to do to help elevate and get people to yes in terms of when they're deciding on ZEV versus non-ZEV.
And The next question comes from Shelley Johnson. Hi. Do you see issues from scaling up, quote, very fast with developing new technologies at a large scale and with risks associated with a quick ramp up? Are potential issues known and can be combated? I think maybe, well, Tyson, maybe you can kick us off, and then I would invite our other colleagues, maybe Hannah or Kylan, if you have more to add on that and you're working on this as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of scaling up fast, I think we have no other choice. We need to scale up fast. I think if you look at charging infrastructure or hydrogen fueling infrastructure, and oftentimes we say charging to take both of those, but it's all good investment, right? If you're laying the conduit, you can always expand later. It's so I think there's a lot of benefit there. Also scaling up quickly, you know, we're seeing the economies of scale to bring down the costs. So as you buy more, you know, components, you can bring down the cost for everything. So, but I'll hand it over to maybe Hannah or anybody.
Sure. Yeah, I think some of the things we're looking into to help with this, if you're considering, you know, fleets and others who are going to be adopting these technologies, there are a lot of questions they have if they've never operated them before. So scaling up fast includes ensuring that they feel comfortable with the technology and that we're rolling out resources to help them make those decisions, as well as all of the investments that will be made to support those technologies. So there's a lot that goes into it. I think the ZEV strategy does a good job of pulling in those components, because every single pillar is going to be important to ensure that scale can happen, and every aspect of those pillars needs to have a clear strategy and a clear way forward. And we're going to be working with all our agency partners to ensure that happens.
And just at that point, I would say the real risk is scaling up too slowly. If we're not fighting climate change fast enough, we're not winning. You know, winning slowly is not good enough. So we really need to, enact this whole of government effort to provide the resources necessary to scale up as fast as we can.
Yeah, before we jump to the next question, just one other thing occurs to me that with regard to this question around developing new technologies and scaling up quickly, you know, I think as we understand it, many of the technologies, let's say, you know, hydrogen and fuel cell technology for heavy duty, for example, the technology is ready. This is what we're hearing. And I'd say that, you know, batteries are evolving very quickly too, but it seems to be that the ability to scale up isn't so much on the technology side. And so it's really putting in place these kind of supportive policies and having the ability to unlock private investment and really you kind of unleash the ability for economies of scale, which will help us scale up. So great question. And we're ready. We need scale, as Kylan said, quickly. Okay. Our next question is from Carlene Cullen. So have there been significant advancements for hydrogen production, which are GHG free and energy efficient? Well, David isn't here to respond to that question, but luckily Tyson and I can probably cover this one. So Tyson, why don't you start, and I'll add anything in.
Well, I think the short answer is yes. And then if you look at the network now, a lot of our hydrogen stations are 100% renewable using credits, and we're getting more and more direct reductions at the stations as well. And I think that, you know, we're just at the starting point here on the hydrogen thing in terms of energy efficiency and you know what we're driving towards. You know, you look at hydrogen, there's biogas resources, there's renewable electricity with electrolysis, it's using curtailed energy, it's using directed electricity as well. And so there's a tremendous amount of opportunities. There's, you know, companies who are coming to us with some frequency about, you know, new ideas in terms of generating stuff, but it's all about taking it from the bench scale to the macro scale. And so Gia, I'm not sure if you'd want to add anything.
Yeah, just that we've been hearing both from, you know, kind of government and from private sector that there is a sight line on green hydrogen that is, you know, close or at cost parity with fossil fuels within the mid 2020s. And so I think there really is an opportunity there, and certainly lots of untapped potential. So I think we are headed in that direction. And California is certainly focused on, we want more green hydrogen. There are minimum requirements, percentages that are required for those stations that are open here, for those businesses that are receiving low carbon fuel standard credits. So we are very interested in that, and see that we have a big opportunity there to improve our economy. So.
One more thing, Gia, just like in terms of batteries and electricity and hydrogen and fuel cells, I think what we're trying to do with the strategy is to play to the strength of both. Like they each have their own kind of unique strengths, and really in the need for combustion, we're going to need both of these things together and playing to those strengths. And so, as we bleed in, there's, light duty to heavy duty. We're going to see how the market plays out. What the strategy is trying to do is lay the foundation so that the market can have, ample opportunity to really, drive investment and push it forward. And every ZEV is a good ZEV.
Great point. Yeah. Okay, another from Shelley Johnson. As the California 177 states, EU and China ramp up ZEV percentages, are there concerns on materials needed for battery resourcing and renewable energy, et cetera, and environmental damages to countries producing batteries? Yeah, Tyson or Hannah, maybe you who wants to talk about this one? I'm thinking maybe some words about Lithium Valley and some other broader comments.
Do you want to go,
Sure.
Hannah?
Sure, I can go first. So, yeah, these issues often come up and are considered by various state agencies. A couple of things that we can point out, and Gia, you mentioned the Lithium Valley mission. Maybe I'll leave that to Tyson because I know he knows more about that than I do, but there's also a battery recycling advisory committee specifically for electric vehicle batteries in the state, which is considering how to move forward with that. And I think it was the Union of Concerned Scientists that just released a report recently, maybe yesterday, that looks at the total life cycle of electric vehicles and batteries as compared to combustion engine vehicles, and finds, they're still very much cleaner than internal combustion engine vehicles, even including all of those components with batteries and with the grid electricity powering those vehicles, which obviously depends on region. But there are a lot of activities in this regard, and I think we're happy to provide more detail to this person as well. I'll hand it off to Tyson.
Great. I would just say it's not only a challenge, but it's also a real exciting opportunity. And one of the things in the strategy is pointing out that Lithium Valley work. And we have lots of resources of lithium in California. And so we're looking at setting up in Lithium Valley as one of our priority communities that, we're trying to get more workforce opportunities for. And so the geothermal brine is rich in lithium. And so we have a commission that's looking directly at that, trying to kickstart, more of a, kind of cradle to grave system here in California. So it's a big opportunity. And then you look at battery chemistries, like there's improvements being made regularly, like reducing the amount of precious, like cobalt or something that needs to go into a battery, for example. So I think yes, it's an issue. We're paying close attention, but it's also a huge opportunity.
Yeah, maybe Gia, as the EU is being mentioned, maybe I can pitch in. So the EU launched its smart and e-mobility strategy in December. We're closely eyeing on this, also in our collaboration with the EU through EU Climate Kick, and this is one of their specific topics. I think there's a lot we can learn, that they can learn from us, and that we can learn from them in this particular respect. So yes, we will definitely look into this. A very important issue.
Great. Okay, we have just a couple minutes left here, and I see a few more questions. So we'll try to get through as many as we can here. Our next question comes from Skate GS314. Why is the new single-family dwellings that are mandated since 2015 to be level 2 EV capable versus 3% of apartments and condos, then 10% in the mid 2019? Now a TBD percentage of new apartments and condos? Hannah?
Yep. Sure. So we're very actively monitoring this proceeding. The Department of Housing and Community Development and the California Air Resources Board, as well as many other state agencies, are working very closely together to look at what's needed for multifamily dwellings in the California Building Code in order to ensure that our ZEV targets are met. as this comment mentions, so far in the past, the percentages have been increased incrementally, and there have been a lot of comments from stakeholders this cycle that we really need to revisit that structure and think through how we get to these goals in new construction. And we're glad to be doing that, and we anticipate a new proposal will be out in about the next week or so. So it's still TBD, as you mentioned in your question, but we're looking forward to getting to a creative approach there to meet our targets.
Super. Priscilla Roldan, as we continue to scale up the ZEV market, how is GoBiz ensuring that all Californians are a part of this ZEV transition? Well, I think probably anyone on our team could speak to this. Tyson, why don't you take a crack at it? And I think after this, we'll try to keep our questions concise. Maybe we can take one or two more questions. Our answers, excuse me.
Yeah, so I think that's where the equity in every decision goes, and that's the equity engagement strategy. There's already a lot of work going on at the state through SB 350 barriers work that CARB and CEC have been leading with the PUC. There's a disadvantaged communities advisory committee that's been stood up to help inform all that type of stuff. And so there's a lot of work already being done, and then there's a lot more work to do. Roman mentioned kind of that bringing in the priority communities, and so that's what the equity engagement strategy is going to center on, is how do we make sure that we have this all together, everybody knows kind of what's going on, so that we can get into the community. But there's a lot of work to do, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, and having equity as a component of every objective within the state agency action plans asks every agency when they're doing something, hey, what is the equity component of this? So that's a very helpful tool, given that we have so many actions throughout the state. Folks are just, accomplishing the goals set forth in legislation or through regulation. So by asking what can be done for equity changes behavior. And just in our meetings with state agencies, we can see that change start to take place. So we're very excited for what this equity lens has to change the state's approach to zero emission vehicles.
And one last thing, Gia, I just wanted to mention the governor's budget and the priority there that's been put on the Clean Cars for All program and trying to get communities into use ZEVs. And then, there's mobility part of it too. So I think, in the governor's budget, he really prioritized equity and scale. And so, we're hoping to get that through.
Great. Okay. Well, I wish we had more time. I actually think that we need to stop here. So we are happy, though, to talk with anyone. We can try to answer some of these questions offline if people are interested. You're always welcome to reach out to our team, and I'll give some more information on how to reach us at the end. So thank you, team. And in our last segment here, it is my honor to introduce Governor Gavin Newsom.
Climate change is a global crisis, and it's one that we all face. California is facing it head on and creating opportunity for cleaner air, better mobility, and strong economic recovery. The ZEVs have the potential to deliver on all of these goals. And that's why just last September, we mandated sales of all new passenger vehicles to be zero emissions by 2035, medium and heavy duty by 2045. I directed our Office of GoBiz to lead in building our market development strategy to reach these targets, in part to ensure market benefits are shared. Look, California is consistently on the leading and cutting edge of clean energy future, with the most ambitious climate policies anywhere in the nation. And we're proving over and over, again and again, that safeguarding our planet does not have to come at the expense of economic prosperity. In fact, we're doubling down with over $1.5 billion for infrastructure and incentives that were included in our latest proposed state budget. Look, we know that addressing climate change has the potential to lead our economic recovery because our ZEV strategy is centered around California's most important asset, people, in every sense of the word. So when I issued my ZEV EO in September, I was under no illusions that reaching these targets would be easy, but I think it's possible when we all work together.
Okay, thank you, Governor Newsom. So in our final minute here, I just would like to wrap up with a thank you to Governor Newsom, to Kate Gordon, and to our California agency leadership for their comments, to Roman and to Tyson and all of our GoBiz teammates. And thank you, Ellen and her team and the Coast to Coast program and helping bring this event to life. And also a very heartfelt thanks to all of you who have participated today and to all those stakeholders who have been working with us these last several months in helping to make this strategy ready to go. So with that, I think I'll just say that if you want to get in touch with us, we are welcome. Please visit the website, thegobiz.ca.gov. You'll find on there the ZEV strategy. Also, this is where we'll have the agency action plans and the pillar priorities posted, as well as the metrics tracking. So you can come back there and it will evolve over time. Also, as Tyson mentioned, you can sign up for a roll up your sleeves list, which is there on that same website. And you're welcome to reach out to our GoBiz team anytime for, if you have questions or if you have any ideas on how we can improve the strategy or how we can improve our implementation. And so that would be zev@gobiz.ca.gov. You can reach us there. And there's plenty of other ways to contact us. So with that, I thank you all for spending this hour with us, and we look forward to more.